Andy, thanks very much indeed for the presentation. Andy and John Barr now with us for a couple of questions. John, the strategy here, tell us a bit more about the particular focus on Stanley and Greater Stanley.
Well, it's more an East Texas focus, and the reason for it is really quite logical. That's our cheapest producing wells, and what we think will continue to be our cheapest producing wells. Welch is a nice asset, and it's produced very well for us for a long period of time, but it's not a cheap asset, and it's an older asset. And when it breaks down, it tends to seriously break down, and it costs quite a bit of money to repair. So that's the reason why we put Welch up for sale, which I think will still happen at some stage in the near future. Arcoma, probably in a similar situation where it's cash neutral for us. It's producing okay, but not in huge volumes. If we had the right opportunity, we would sell out of it. If we come to Stanley, Greater Stanley, we're really talking about costs in the teens per barrel. And that makes a huge difference to the cost structure. And we'd expect to see at the Falcon 1 well, which is obviously the one we're going to have a 60% interest in, if that's successful, we would see similar sort of costings. So it's cost-driven, and it's about using the capital in the best possible way to evolve the company as such.
Are you disappointed that the sale of Welch didn't go through?
I'm confused, I think it's fair to say. I've never met this particular individual. He's dealt with our man in Dallas. He's paid $90,000 US as a non-refundable deposit on a $300,000 acquisition, and then the last minute didn't produce the rest of the money. I don't understand it. It's certainly something I wouldn't do. I expect that he'll try and complete the transaction, but it's too late. And we are immediately putting it back for sale. And as Andy said in his presentation, it's more likely that we'll get more for it now because, in fact, the price of oil has gone up, and it continues to produce nicely. It's producing 35 to 40 barrels a day, day in, day out. And there's a number of those types of assets in the Texas area. But this is a nice one, but it's expensive, and that's the reason why we're selling it.
Have you had expressions of interest from other firms?
Absolutely. Half a dozen on my desk.
Can you give us a bit more detail as far as the opportunity at Falcon? What would that mean for Mosman?
Falcon is not dissimilar to the Stanley project. It's been JV'd with the Baja guys. It's been identified through 3D seismic. It's an existing area where there's production in the area, and they believe it's got a very good chance. And our technical guys, including Andy, looked at it, and he also believes it's got a good chance. The difference for us is that we're taking 60% of this well, so it's a significant change in equity level. Obviously, it's a significant change in cost, and if it produces, it will be a significant change in production. So that's why we'd like to have done this 12 months ago, but we couldn't fund it at the time. So we've done that placing recently, and pretty well all of that placing goes straight into the drilling of the Falcon well. And based on what I've heard during the last 24 hours, site work should start next week in preparing the drill pad.
So Andy, this could potentially change the profile for Mosman here.
Yeah, I think you see in the presentation what one well at the Falcon well would be a significant step up, and what is particularly exciting is the fact there are multiple prospects, follow-up structures identified on 3D seismic, and as John says, at this higher equity level, the intention is to use the cash flow generated from one to drill the next one and to organically grow the company. That lease area alone is plenty of work to keep us actively drilling for the foreseeable future.
John, can you just tell us a bit more? How excited are you about the opportunity at the Admatius Basin?
It's potentially huge. It's a similar, but we've been saying this for some time, and I recognise that we've been saying it for some time. We've got Central Petroleum, who's in joint venture with Santos, pretty well surrounding all our ground, and they're doing quite a bit of work. They drilled the Dukas well about 12 months ago now, but they stopped it before they got to their objective simply because of pressure. And that's all they've said. They've not said too much more, but various oil and gas people will tell you what that means. So they're now saying that they're going to have to import a rig into Australia of sufficient size to be able to handle the pressure, and then they'll finish the well off. Unfortunately, that's going to take 12 months, they're saying. There are producing aspects to their ground already. You've got the Marini project to the northwest of us, and you've got a gas project, Dingo Gas, to the southeast of us. So we appear to be online. It's a fantastic looking asset. I'm a non-technical person, so I can say that. It's also a very pretty asset. The ground is gorgeous in Central Australia. So yeah, it's got lots and lots of potential, but it's a big project. So we're going to have to farm it out. You could spend several millions of dollars on this project before you got to anywhere near a development decision.
And you've had some expressions of interest here as well, I'd imagine.
Yes. Yeah, if you remember 18 months ago, we signed up a Chinese group, and they got into their due diligence. But unfortunately, this COVID, we've all suffered from it. This COVID situation has been shocking. So that firm, I do speak to the CEO, wouldn't say regularly, but often, and they're really just on hold with everything. It's really affected what they do as such. They can't come into Australia, and they can't get to the ground because the indigenous population are very disease sensitive, and the Central Land Council have basically said nobody's going there. So we've got a complete blockage there, which is awful, but it's I understand the reasons for it.
John, is Mosman contributing to the workover costs at Arkoma? What's happening here?
They've basically been paid for by production. So we haven't put money into Arkoma for some period of time.
Has the working interest there changed following recent events with Blackstone?
No. It was considered at one point in time, but what happened, Blackstone basically paid us out. So all the working interests remain the same. And we haven't decided what we will do with Arkoma in the fullness of time, but we're happy with it at the moment.
As far as the portfolio itself at Mosman, are you looking at any additional projects?
Well, we've got lots on our plate. When you look at the Stanley 4 is going to be drilled this quarter. They're working over Stanley 1 at the moment. The Duff lease at Greater Stanley is going to be worked over, I think, in about 2 weeks' time. That is scheduled to start. There's a possibility of a well there, which we haven't made a decision on. We've made a decision on the Falcon well, which we had to fund, which we've now done. So that comes up in a few weeks' time. Excuse me. So there's an enormous amount going on for what is still a very small team of people. And as you're probably aware, Andy and I are stuck in Australia. Not that that's an unpleasant situation, but we can't get access because if we leave Australia and then come back, we go into mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks, and I don't think anyone particularly wants to go through that. So yeah, there's an enormous amount of things happening right now, and if we get success with Stanley, if we get success with Duff, if we get success with Falcon, then we'll just go up another set of stairs.
You say there's an enormous amount of work going on. Are you covered for some of these costs for what's planned?
We're completely covered. Yeah. So the last raising we did, and I know people think we just raise all the time for the sake of raising, but we actually raise to spend the money on the ground. So we raised money to do the Falcon 1 exercise. Obviously, with the sale of Welsh falling over, it does make that budget slightly tighter, and that's why we'll continue to sell Welsh. But we've also got the shares in Mosman Capital, which is listed in Canada, and we'll probably look at disposing of those in the next period of time to increase the cash funding. So we're absolutely fine for cash at the moment, and it's in the background that the directors have basically not been paid for some period of time, and they're bringing forward a shareholders meeting to try to secure shares rather than take cash. And the fact that we're really minimising our costs at every level.
When do you expect you'll be profitable?
$1 million question. That's $10 million question.
Can you tell us what the oil price is?
Yeah. Well, the issue with that question is, I would have thought after Stanley 4 and after Falcon, we should get there. But I can't say it with any confidence because I don't know what the flow rates are going to be at those wells. Falcon's clearly got gas in it. I don't know what the ratio with gas to oil is. I don't know whether it's going to be successful or not successful. So there's all those factors which, that's the risk of exploration. That's the business we're in, as such. But we're getting pretty close. If you look at the December balance sheet, but this is pre-COVID, all the operations made money, and in fact it was only quite a small loss for the year. Obviously that changed in the COVID environment in terms of the production volumes came down, so it gave us less revenue, but the costs went down even further because we just slashed costs everywhere we could. So we're not too far away.
And Andy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that whilst oil price is down, we're also seeing significant reduction in costs. They're actually very happy to be drilling Falcon in the current environment because it's much lower cost. The rig rates are down. The other costs, the steel, tubing, and casing costs are reduced. So it's so whilst oil price is down, it's a good time to be drilling, and gas price is steady, so Falcon will be very profitable if that when that comes on production. But I don't think we're allowed to make too much forecasts, financial forecasts. It's a kind of wait and see till the accounts come out.
Well, John, that brings me to the end of my list of questions here. Have you got a final message tonight for your investors?
My final message is I'm a big shareholder and I'm not selling.
There you go. The final words, John Barr, founder, and yes, he said, I'm a big shareholder and I'm not selling. I also agreed with John that, try and do everything you can to become mandatorily quarantined. We don't want that. So thank you very much, Andy Carroll, John Barr. Big thanks to my colleague, Andrew Scott. Big thanks to the other presenters, Roger Sloman, John Shaw, Dave Wall, who hopefully is now fast asleep since he's in Perth at the moment. And thank you for everyone who does the graft behind the scenes. That's Thomas and Craig, and for the first time, Greg Anderson, who is my colleague in Toronto, who helped me set up lots of bits and pieces for tonight's broadcast. Well, next event is in a week's time, Thursday, the 30th of July. And we will be joined by OnKiMoon, Horizon Discovery, Ergomed and Scancell Holdings. And if you've missed bits of tonight's event, don't worry, because we will be sending you a replay of the entire event, plus the presentations that you have seen. It's been an absolute honour. I'll see you this time next week.